And I'm saying this over and over to him. This happens so many days in Sid. It's like I'm trying to wake him up, break the spell. Code word. Blue, it's me. I'm your mother. I love you. I'm here. I'm repeating this over and over like it breaks the trance. The code word is mother. Like he has to remember his origin point with me as well as because once a Draco own you, they kind of program you to think that this is the only reality you have ever known. And if you begin to remember love, something shifts. And the programming is a spell that will be broken. Yeah. I have a feeling that will make sense to some of you and be useful to some of you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 20th episode in the Bringing Light to the Darkness series. I'm Rebecca Rose, Series Blue, and super excited to be returning after 6 months sitting with this material to bring the story back to you. And it's a big one. It's a really big one. In the meantime, as I've been processing all of this, you will have noticed interviews I've been doing with other people on the channel. My Starseed Speak series has been so much fun. We'll be continuing. Up next is Sasha Stone and a host of other people. But today we're talking about my story and going into a pretty deep dive on some new information that I've spoken of in interviews only very briefly. And what I love about my series is that I get to tell the story in all the nuanced complexity of it. It sometimes just doesn't happen in the scope of an interview with someone else. So we'll be unearthing some things that have not ever been heard before. Yeah. I also have a new Rumble channel. You can support me on that by just following me on Rumble below, the link there. And I'll be bringing more content that I can't necessarily bring to YouTube. You guys may have heard that I've had some censorship on the channel here, and I'm looking to move beyond those barriers and speak to some of the topics that really mean a lot to me around child trafficking and other kind of deviance going on in the world that we know we have to be a little careful what we say on YouTube. So yeah, please support the new Rumble channel. It's slowly growing, and check out some of my recent interviews on the Starseed Speak series. I'm super happy to be here today, by the way. Thank you all for returning. It's so much is going on. It's slowly turning into spring here in the far north, which is like runs at a fever pace into summer as we, at least this far north in the subarctic are heading into like the all-night light period. The midnight sun is turning up the heat. So lots of blessings inside of that. And also I went through a women's health challenge through March and April, and coming out the other side of that, renewing my faith in our capacity to heal ourselves through the quantum field, through intention, supplication, prayer, energy work, and visualization. So much of what we maybe expect to find, for example, through med beds, is available in our own technology. So I feel like, or maybe the question I have for myself is, did I just turn cancer into a benign cyst? So quietly celebrating in that in movement in my personal life, and sitting with, what it really means to heal and to be a healer. All have that capacity on both sides of that. So thanks again for being here. You can also catch me live at the Super Soldier Activation Conference in Orlando. That's October 8th through 13th. You can find that link also below. And I will be doing some live readings as well while I'm there speaking and engaging with the audience. So you can actually book a live session with Rebecca Rose while you're there. I'd love to meet some of you guys who'll be coming, and it's going to be a good time, I'm sure. So what are we going into today? It's like I've been sitting with this, getting the notes together for the past days here, going like, what is even the entry point? And because the story for me is so emotionally complex, and kind of mind-blowing and shocking, because it's like, you know, this with the story of Dean, my twin in the programs that I knew nothing about. He came to me psychically some years ago, and it was like there's nothing, nothing, nothing. I had no recall of him, and the dial on memory retrieval goes from 0 to 100 in about 2 seconds. So it's like you're racing alongside a moving vehicle, or am, as I try and integrate. Like I said, the emotional complexity and the nuances of the story, the information itself. So this is a big ask for me to kind of download, right? But I'm so happy that I did. Um, and it speaks to the huge impact the SSP, like all that lies in wait for us to retrieve. Like I think I've said this previously, that I'm going to be a little gray-haired old lady still getting memory back, and I feel like that's just still scratching the surface of all that I went through, and all the years out there and all the experiences. And maybe that's okay. Yeah. It's certainly been life-changing to remember all of this. And it's still a work in progress. And for the record, some people, I can hear you asking, how did you get the memory back? What happened? Part of this came through meditation. You guys know that haven't done like a hypnotic regression to get memory back, but more through sitting with my own mind and working with the breath and meditation. That's where we really get into the retrieval of what's in the deep unconscious. Yeah. And also through my experience is in a float tank. You guys know that. I mentioned this in other videos, the float tank has been a place where you can get, anytime we're moving beyond the beta brainwave state, we are into, alpha, theta, and even into delta brainwaves, we can access more memory. And such is the case with the float tank, or it used to be in the past known as a sensory deprivation chamber, which is such a misnomer. I feel it's just such a soothing, loving experience in which I always feel I'm deeply connected to self and source and spirit. Highly recommended. So, okay. So I had a hybrid sun on Mars, and I think the title's probably a pretty good giveaway. You guys know that. I've mentioned my son Blue briefly in other interviews, but not gone in depth at all, at all, at all. So, and like Dean, my twin in the programs, he came to me psychically first. And um, unlike Dean, I was very unwilling to receive this child. Unlike Dean, I was very unwilling, adamantly unwilling to receive this little guy. I was very like, I don't have time for this. I don't know who he is, and I can't entertain this right now. I'm a busy woman, like go away. Which tells me, because I have a pretty, there's a warmth inside of me that definitely receives children, so it's like what is the resistance that Rebecca's having? Let's dive into this. And for those of you who don't know, if you're new here to the channel, welcome. If you don't know the story of Dean, that's given, I think it might be the 10th video in this series. I'm not sure. I go into the training process and how I met Dean. And he very much introduced himself to me psychically. I had no idea who he was. He came in with a protector kind of energy for me. And um, yeah, we were twinned and sent to Mars, and we became psychic super soldiers together. The path with Dean ended poorly. I can happily say that the story with my sons and my son ended a lot more, or hasn't ended, but it has gone into a much brighter channel than what happened with Dean. Um, yeah, so scroll back to November 15th, 2024, not so far along in the past, just the end of last year, right? So I'm recording this May 10th, and sitting in meditation like I do every morning, nothing unusual going on. But after a while, I'm seeing this little boy, maybe just 4 or 5, a little older than a toddler, but not much. I'm seeing him psychically to my right at the altar space where I meditate, my bench. I've got, a Himalayan salt lamp. It's turned down really low, and feathers and crystals and stones and these things and things that are just important to my spiritual practice. Um, A lot of sweet energy in that space. And I see this little guy, like he's just like looking at stuff on the altar and he's touching stuff. Again, psychically, etherically, I can see all this happening through the quantum field. Yeah. And he's part human, part reptilian. He's a hybrid. I'm like, okay, all right. And I don't think too much of it at first. I'm like, okay, who's the kid, whatever. But he keeps coming back over several days. I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to get something out of this, not just ignore him. What's the deal? And frankly, I want nothing to do with a child. This is, again, also unusual for me. I'm like, get the kid out of here. I definitely don't have room for this. So, yeah, my heart is not open to this child at all. It's very telling. Eventually, though, after some days, there is an opening because he keeps coming around, and obviously he needs something from me. And one of the big themes of our journey through this video today is going to be about opening to the unexpected and also unconditional love. Um, Unconditional love always starts with the self. I mean, I've had thousands of hours in training on the cushion with this, so eventually my heart does open to receive this little boy and all he has for me, and the journey that is still unfolding between us. And so glad I didn't just shoo him out the door, because we have both needed this profound reunion to take place. It really, I would say, so begins a love story across space, time, and dimensions with my son that I call Blue. He has a blue emanation from through his field, through his body somewhat, and certainly through his energy field, hence the name. I will read, as I have in the past in some of my videos. Don't worry, I'm not going to read all 25 pages of my notes connected to this, but I have a few things that, sometimes it's best said through the text that I've written, compiled so many transcripts over the years, which will eventually find themselves into a book. So everybody can read I love the nuanced subtlety of a lot of these things that, again, often are not captured through, video stories with interviews. And even here on the channel, there's so much more depth I can get into through the written word. Yeah, so meeting him on the 15th, kind of shooing him out the door. Get out of here, don't have time. Rebecca's resistant, kind of cold. November 22nd, not so far later down the road. We're talking maybe a week later, right? I'm in the float tank, nearing the end of my luxurious hour-long elixir, weightless, light, floating as if in space, gently rocked and lulled, like a lullaby beyond space and time. And I feel this reptilian child, the one I sensed for the first time last week in meditation. Yeah, he was on my right, picking up things on my altar stones and crystals as I was meditating. And tonight, toward the end of flow, I regard him here again, also on my right, and suddenly I crumple inwardly, float over onto my side in the fetal position, and begin to sob, racked with emotion, tears, the past and present merging. This child, I know suddenly, was made from my own genetics on Mars. This child is my own. And it was super emotional. I was just like wailing in the tank, and I wondered later if anybody had heard me in the wellness center. It was grief of immeasurable magnitude, I feel. And in my notes here, I said shocking, impossible, unbelievable, and yet this is true. This is my child? Question mark, exclamation point. There is so much grief connected to this, and I am just touching the surface of it. Jesus, what happened to me out there? What did they do to him, to me? What did they do to us? He's little more than a toddler, soft and warm and somehow in need. Yeah. And in float, I sense him with me as if on my lap, or wanting to be there, silently asking for that, like asking for a cuddle. My heart opens wide then, completely flooded with love and deep, deep longing, rich emotion, saturated and vibrant. And that great ocean of grief. It's like a full truth coming home in a full, complete package. I know it, he's mine. This has been done and it can't be undone. Tyrion, who, for those of you who may not know, is my mate on the Light Alliance ship, also, aka that's another word for the Galactic Confederation ship I'm also on in a pod in conjunction with this earthly life, as Rebecca. Tyrion indicates that it has to be this way, and I know he's right for some higher plan. I get that. Even though I don't see it all clearly at the moment, I understand. And I said, no, in the capital letters in my notes, no wonder I've been seeing galactic kids around me for the whole year, this past year, and even into the prior year. I'd been sort of a precognitive of this meeting with my son. And then in the following day, I say to Tyrion in meditation again the next morning, and I hear Tyrion saying, you must learn to love him. He is here to open your heart. True enough. Yeah, and I'm still at the point where I'm ambivalent at the moment about this new visitor, unable to completely accept him yet. Cheeky with Tyrion, I say, well, what if I don't want to make him my own? And then Tyrion responds, then the mission may not be complete. That is your choice. And I say, of course, I know Tyrion is right. So give a little backstory to this. And we'll come back into, we're going to thread some context through all of this with um, you know, the becoming of my son, how he was created, what happened, and what unfolded there. Yeah, with some backstory. So you guys know I was twinned with Dean, sent to Mars through a jump gate, and we were both weaponized, became super soldiers, and were sold off, and so on and so forth. I was later owned by the Draco and trained as a pilot and a variety of other things. So a quick soundbite on that. You also have probably seen the video I did that explained being on patrol. This is the shootout on Mars, bringing light to the darkness video. You can find that easily. Scroll down. Yeah, running into while I was on patrol, a Draco soul scalping operation. I basically shot down, and the Light Alliance, aka Galactic Confederation, intervenes from the ship that I'm also on as a galactic self in a pod. They do intervene because I'm in danger of having my soul scalped and consciousness robbed, and they otherwise had not intervened in my SSP experience, but there was a reason for this, which will become more clear as I go through today's video content. And here I am then picked up by the short indigenous Mars reptilians and taken back to their underground lair or domicile, or, they had a really beautiful underground world which they had created using their spiritual connection to the Mars energy, the living consciousness of the planet Mars, which is also connected to dragon energy, which is itself connected to primary consciousness. So there's a connect some dots there. I just wanted to give a little backstory. So as I'm speaking to, and this is all in prior videos, watch the series, watch that you can find all the videos that go into great detail about everything I just mentioned in the soundbite, the backstory to this. How did I end up with these short reptilians? So, and it's also, yes, as I always say, part of my soul's journey, right? This is, the reunion with my son has been definitely part of my soul's code. And as Tyrion said, he's here to open your heart. And who's the best to do that other than a child, returning innocence in a way to both Blue, my child, myself, and something in my human Rebecca template that needed to be opened even wider, So there is a gift inside of all this, really healing, I think, to the mother in me, the nurturer in me, and also to just heal and complete something from the programs that I can't even quite name, but I can intuit very well. Yeah, I think it's all part of a bigger plan, and I will go into that as well. Why would they want me as the mother? That race was a subgroup, an isolated subgroup, as near as I could tell. There's other indigenous reptilians groups on Mars that they were disconnected from, and they seem to be just unto themselves in this group that maybe had maybe 20 or 30 of them, not a lot of them left. And they were highly advanced spiritually, but not in the manner that we think of technologically. And their genes were getting, their genetics were getting regressed because they just didn't have genetic diversity. Um, yeah, so basically they were dying out. I show up, I'm crashed. They've never seen a human before. So they had always wondered if my technology or my biology could save them in some way. I always knew that. That was always in my recall. I didn't know it would take us down this route, though. So it's also in the why of this. Why did this unfold for me in this way in the SSP on Mars with these guys, these reptilians? Um, and for the record, I recall them as more or less benevolent. I mean, but that's given the context of being involved with the Draco and regressive ET, right, the Greys, Black Hat military and so on, right? So it's all relative. So I remember them more or less fondly, but there's some caveats in that too. I think they were trying to do the best they could for themselves, but didn't end well for me. Anyway, we'll parse this all out, hang out here. We'll connect all these dots. There's also in the why of this, why me, why giving birth to this child, there's something I can't quite name this, although I intuit it very clearly, that was catalyzed by my early time working in the hybrid labs on the moon with the Germans and the Draco, very early on in my abduction experiences. Yeah, like starting when I was 4. So there's something that set the stage for this going back quite a ways into my timeline. Yeah. Um, and there's also, let me give a little read here. Let's see. There's also a connection with um, my Lyran and Dragon energy is important to the question of why me. I'd written this and why I was chosen for this species reconstruction project. It's DNA that's close to primary consciousness and must be had for spiritual reasons. So we'll talk a little bit more down the road here about this. Yeah, and the dragon life force energy of Mars, that's all connected to this race. And all the planets in our solar system, by the way, are alive. As one ascends, so too do the others. And when one planet degrades, so to the others. The ascension pathway is important not just to Earth, but to the whole solar system. That also plays a role inside of this whole story. Um, Going back to, and I'll unpack all that, the dragon relationship to all of this, and to Blue and to myself as we move forward. Um, I've always knew too with these guys that I remembered that these indigenous Mars reptilians that I lived with for a time, kind of happily so for a while, or as close as I might know to happiness as a super soldier in the programs, not known for being a benevolent environment. This felt pretty good to my system. I felt like up to a point I was treated in a way that was pretty humane. Um, that changes a little bit with what I will share today. But I've also said about these guys that they wanted to inspect my soul. They wanted to know if I had a soul. And I think that was very key to what they might do with me if I did have a soul. They might have known that I was a clone, but they could see that there was something higher, some kind of higher light, as we might say, animating my consciousness, even though I was part biology and part technology at that point. So having a breath, having a breath. Um, it was important that for them to, I'll be blunt, use me in the way that they did, um, that I be spiritually connected in some way to source consciousness. I think they were looking for that, even though we could say they weren't the most advanced race technologically in the ways that we normally think of. They didn't have craft. They were not geneticists of any kind. They had no idea what to, another race would have been able to do what they wanted to do and produce offspring in a much more advanced manner. These guys didn't know how, but they because they were spiritually connected to their home planet of Mars and regarded it as a living being, much like we have an opportunity to reconnect with our living planet here, Gaia, Terra, Earth. That was super important to them. They wanted a person who would be connected to spirit and source, or at least capable of it, and had some kind of soul connection. That was key in their decision about how they would use me and what they would do with me. So again, their subgroup is dying out. They're looking for, they had survived some kind of cataclysm on Mars a long time ago. I felt like it may have been nuclear in nature, although I always felt like Mars was a very beat up planet and had been through a lot of different iterations of catastrophe over eons, right? So one thing I know is that they didn't just use my DNA, they used my eggs. And that part for me was kind of shocking because it involved biological intervention that was pretty messy. Um, and to that point, I've said in the past, before all this memory came back to me over these past months, I've always said they and these are my words verbatim, they cannibalize me for parts. Little did I know how apt that was. That was so psychically spot on. I just didn't have the details yet. How right that was, and how eerie and how true. I always knew they wanted, again, to know, they wanted to use my biology or my technology, even though they didn't exactly know how to do that. They tried. And in the ensuing emotional turmoil around all of this, as I was getting all these memories back, I'm like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. It was important and has been important for me to come back to the primary lesson, which is just love your son. The rest will become clear. It's going to be okay. This is kind of the Tyrion's riff, sort of my higher counterpart on the ship. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a minute. The Light Alliance, again, we could formally call them the Galactic Confederation, or one very small ship within that greater umbrella. There's lots of different, connections that can be had through the Galactic Confederation. I don't necessarily like to use such big, lofty terms, more familiar and familial to myself, like family. I just call them the Light Alliance. They, we, I orchestrated this in a way. So Blue and I could be together now and experience this loving reunion, and also an up-leveling of something that could help the solar system evolve in tandem. So there's a big story here and a lot of context. Tyrion said to me that this race, this group, holds the keys to spiritual mastery on Mars. That's a big thing to say. Hence the Galactic Confederation's interest in supporting their survival. Yeah. Again, important to the evolution and spiritual ascension of the solar system. So we want this race to survive. They're dying out. Let's do something. If one planet's held back, the rest kind of lockstep, and kind of it produces like a ceiling. Like if Earth is like continues to be in this quagmire, it can hamper the evolution and ascension of other planets and other energies. We want to kind of energetically uplift in unison, if that makes sense. Yeah. And in general, it's a Syrian light ship with a very ragtag mixed race crew. A lot of refugee missions we have done, rescue missions, and that thing is sort of like our flavor on that ship. So this is in line with that. Why would we intervene on behalf of this kind of almost unknown subgroup on Mars? What would be the point? Partly because it's what we do, is help those in need, and partly because they have a role to play. I mean, we all do, everything does in the greater let's say ascension pathway, moving toward unity consciousness and higher vibration of love for all races. And this story is part of that. Yeah. And we do yeah, I mean, I'm just laughing because over the years reading people's Akashic records and looking into people's soul journeys, like we do, you know, say volunteer ourselves for missions that our human self might say like, why, I didn't sign up for this, that's bogus, I don't want this. But at a higher level, at the soul, the journey of the soul might be, but no, there's going to be an important reckoning for you inside of this. Hence why, you know, when little guy shows up at my altar space on November 15th, I'm not just like flinging him out the door psychically and being like, F off, I don't have anything to do with you. Good thing I didn't do that, right? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's important. And then again and again, I'm going to say, you know, in this case, love is really the lesson, right? Hmm. Okay. So back to Blue's creation and gestation. Yeah. Bit of a story here. It took some wild twists and turns, the likes of which I could not have anticipated. Like it was hard to, like I said, like running alongside a moving vehicle, you know, day after day, trying to like process what was happening in the field as all these memories were coming back. Um, as I'd said, the indigenous Mars reptilians that I ended up living with for a time, you know, they were not geneticists of any sort. They didn't know how to use my genetics to their advantage without causing a lot of harm. So, and remember, they'd never seen a human before, let alone someone who had been kind of cyborged out, you know, as part biology, part technology. Like, what is it? What is she? What is this thing? They knew nothing about human biology or the human reproductive system and so on. So it's getting complex. So in the process of getting at my eggs and engaging in this like hybrid gestation project, as I've called it, an experiment from beginning to end and points between, I and my son began to die. So, oh, pausing. Yeah. I have memory, and this was pretty emotional too. Like I have memory of being not quite living and not quite dead. And I was a clone at this time, but still those memories come back very much as if we're talking about a single human incarnation. As we talk about death of a clone, it's still every bit as poignant as remembering your own death in this bodysuit. Yeah, at least that's how it's come for me. um, read a little bit more from the script here. Let's see, read page 13. Okay, hang out for a second here. We got to get down there. All right. So, oh, the reptilians were trying to save me, although they didn't understand the human Earth reproductive system or what to do for me. It was messy, quote unquote, I said, and maybe not all their fault. I have such a hard time blaming them for inadvertently ending my life. I died there alone with my son. And it could be a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, you know. Um, Maybe they're not as benevolent as I made them out to be, but remember, all things in my memory are relevant to how I'd been treated up to the point when I met them. And it was abominable how I'd been treated and abused, traumatized up to that point. Their interventions were pretty much kid stuff compared to what I'd survived in the time preceding all of this. Oh, goodness. Yeah. But there's a little more here. There's another thing that goes on. So, oh my God, just holding some space for that. It's kind of heavy. It is heavy in my memory. This is what I mean about the emotional complexity. Do you relate to this? Leave me a comment below. What happened then? Remember, there is a ship now abandoned, no longer completely functional, that was my patrol craft. Crashed. It's damaged, but the power generator is still working. Now, the power generator on the craft I've described previously is this beautiful centrifuge of living light connected to source, connected to my consciousness, and so on. It's technically, we could talk about torsion fields, electrogravitics, electromagnetics, all those things would be true. It's basically a big a big spiral of light. There's a lot happening there technologically to allow it to generate power for the craft, right? What did the reptilians do? Can you feel what happened there? They put me and my son, because we were dying, into the power generator of the ship and used it like an incubator, which wasn't a bad idea. It was actually really smart to do that. Yeah. Rightly so, because they knew it was wed with my singular consciousness. They knew it was like an extension of myself, and they thought it might help me revive. Um, they thought it could save me and my son, and they weren't wrong. But that they didn't know is that the power generator, under certain conditions and circumstances, also works as a portal. Okay. Are you with me? Can you psychically see where this is going? And I wrote in my notes about, I mean, I had a very visceral memory of this, of it's like we're in there and the lights are going out. Everything was like mauve and lilac and sort of these muted pinks and lavenders. The color scheme, the colors that I feel within it like a womb, as my son and I are in there hanging between life and death. Um, and I feel the light of the power generator dimming as I'm dying. As I'm dying, it's dying, so to say. And of course, my son is following suit. We're not going to survive this, right? What happens? The power generator, this living light centrifuge of energy, transports us to my home ship, to the pods where my avatar is resting. I have a connection to that on a pretty regular basis. And basically saving me, transporting me and my son to a place where we can complete the gestation in a healthy way and also the birth. Now, remember, I've talked about why is this important to the Light Alliance? Why are they assisting in this whole thing? Well, it's because we know they're important to the Mars collective consciousness and spiritual ascension for Mars, which is linked back to spiritual ascension of the Earth and to our solar system. So it's kind of a win-win to let this play out. Yeah. Um, yeah. And this is such a beautiful healing counterpoint to how this whole operation, this hybrid project has gone up till now has been like a total disaster, train wreck, dumpster fire, right? Like, oh my God, are you kidding? ah, um, they tried, they tried. It was just messy and it killed me. But though my clone did die, yes, absolutely true. But there's a part of me that always remains. It's always living. It's always connected back to creation. And the part of me that is that more spiritually ascended galactic aspect, which I've always reckoned as coming from the Andromeda Galaxy. That's how I kind of trace that. We're all many things. So no need to go too far down a rabbit hole on that. And again, it makes sense with the ship's directives, like our collective sort of mission to help refugee colonies. And we've helped beings whose homeworlds have been destroyed, or where there's been wars, or people had nowhere to go, or and so on and so on and so on. Long history of that. Um, at this point, you know, and just feel that. It feels so good to feel my son, myself in the pod in a safe space with people who care about me, who love us. It's really beautiful. Just pausing with that. Really nice. Um, and while in the beginning part, the first couple months of my memory recall were really about him kind of resting with me as a baby, kind of going back to that. So really poignant, nurturing. Yeah. After I had opened my heart to the whole experience, which we know it took me a little while. I see him mostly as an adult and like a grown warrior aspect. He's strong. He is strong and he's tall and he's fit and you know, he always, he's come to me in a numerous ways, numerous times, thanking me, being grateful. He knows in a way I died to give him life. Not to sound too dramatic, but it's such is the case, and he knows that. He's come to thank me in a lot of ways. So I don't know the thanks are necessarily needed. I mean, he's my kid, but um, yeah. No, let me read a few of the um, sound bites from the notes again that kind of illustrate some of our interactions over the months in linear linear terms. Um, come with me back to December 13th. Okay, this is a really sweet one. Um, yeah. Uh, oh, sorry, December 10th. Bear with me, thank you. In meditation, my hybrid son gives me a butterfly cupped in his hands, and he's a little boy at this point. The butterfly takes flight and he laughs. He seems just like a happy human kid in this moment. Yet I know so much has happened for him and to him. And then that night, there's just such big tears and sobbing in the kitchen tonight as I talk about my son to my friend M via voicemail. We'll just call her M. I did not realize the wound was so deep, the longing and loss so complete. And there was a loss of him. We'll talk about that briefly or momentarily. Soon is what I mean. We will talk about it at length in a moment. Yeah, Friday the 13th December. I see that now that my child self, my 4-year-old, who I call little one, I've talked to her about her a bunch on this show, is afraid that he will leave us. She's gotten attached to him. My son is constantly seeking the development of little dragon-like subby wings on his back and reaching for Tia's family and just for the dragons in general. Tia is my Lyran dragon avatar self, me. We'll talk about that here shortly too. I tell my child self, little one, in earnest, he can't fly yet, and when he does, we'll go with him. In other words, like, don't worry that he's going to leave us. It's going to be okay, because we're both dragons. We become dragons together, and we don't have to leave each other. There's no more departure. There's no more loss. So something kind of beautiful there. Um, Yeah, and there's a couple moments in my memory recall that take us into a watery realm of Mars. So this is just a couple days later, December 15th. We're at an underground or inland sea on Mars. We go there, my son and I. I feel happy and at peace with him, my child and myself. It's like a baptism within these special waters, like being reborn. I feel purified. I also understand that life comes from here, or it came from here. Did life on Mars, to some degree, begin here, or rather, is it sustained from here? The latter feels true in the case of the Mars reptilians, my child's lineage. Yeah. There is water on Mars, and I saw it underground with the Mars reptilians when I lived with them. December 17th. I hear my son's distress cries. They're unique. He has a unique language, even though we are capable now of telepathic communication. What noise is this that he makes? He clings to me. He will hang on to me even if I let go. He whimpers. What's wrong? It is sometimes hard to read his language. Is this related to the Draco? And hence, we've got another chapter opening up. Stay tuned here. We're just getting started. There's quite a bit more here. This is me like just starting to scratch the surface of something else. Hmm. Let's zip on down to January 7th. Oh, January 2nd. Yeah, we'll return to that about the Draco. There's an important part of the story there that we need. Um, January 2nd, turning into the new year. My son, I see him on my right. He's very young but able to walk. He gives me something in a shell, like a nautilus or a spiral, kind of like the Fibonacci spiral. I can't quite tell. And I hear a scroll to the universe. Again, yesterday, I felt the dark figure to my right and sit, which is connected to my son. It's connected to the Draco. And I become a white dragon holding and protecting my son, who contains important information for the ascension of our star system. So there we go. We have that connection again. Son's giving me a scroll to the universe. It's connected to genetics for him and to ascension. Ooh, yeah. And just a side note about the pods on the ship. I've talked about them some in this series already. Beautiful feeling, like being in a soft, warm womb of light consciousness. And the pods maintain stasis in a variety of ways and also themselves can serve as portals. So there's a lot to them. But I said, I see and feel crystals almost like diamonds in my solar plexus as I'm in the pods. It's connected to their technology. And the quartz crystal is doing something to quote unquote power me. And it's very much like this connection in the solar plexus where I feel these like quartz crystals embedded sort of between the dimensions between my earthly body here and my energy body here as Rebecca, and also the pod itself and my avatar on the pod on the ship. So I feel like that connection might be important to somebody who's listening now. So I wanted to just take a minute to add that. Remember too that all of this is happening through the auspices of the quantum field. So past and future and even the present moment almost become irrelevant as we're transcending space and time. And this is how quantum healing happens. And it's relevant to what I spoke of in my own healing challenge at the beginning of the video. And I said, hey, I've been gone a while. Here's what's going on. We can rewrite timelines. We can rewrite the script. We can go back and heal things that have happened in what we call the past and shift the future. We can shift the past. We can shift a lot of things. I mean, there's so much, to my knowledge now, living through what I lived through in Montauk and all the time experiments, time trials, and grotesquerie around time's manipulation. In this case, I've learned a lot. So be aware that as you journey, you are able to go back at least and create a healed outcome in situations for you that maybe in the past were unwell in some way. I also know that Blue has a ton of information for me. If I'm willing to kind of fearlessly sit with it in meditation, sit with him and let it come through, which is not always the big, it's not always the easiest ask. For sure, it's not. And I can also take that a step further. I can see through his eyes, I can feel who through his body, I can recall memory through him. That's a lot. That's a lot. And that happens with a variety of beings, not just my son. I can kind of bring my consciousness into what we call the body of the other, the mind stream of the other, the consciousness of the other, to gather information if I need to, all in respectful ways and benevolent ways, of course. But my son and I are super wed, just like Dean and I, in a different way, because we were twin through trauma-based mind control and kept in cages. Our minds were wed, our psyches were wed. And, with Dean, I couldn't tell my thought from his in a more benevolent way, such as the case with my son. It's more just because we're wed through our, through birth. Yeah. Let's journey into the inland sea again for a minute. Page 16. I encourage you guys to write tons of notes on, if you're doing memory retrieval from programs, write everything down. You'll start to connect a lot more dots and it will make sense to you. Yeah. Oh, I'm missing it. Thanks for hanging out with me in the pause. So this is, oh yeah, here we go. I know I can share, to wit, my point about sharing the mind stream of my child. I know I can share the mind stream and memory of my son, and I'm hesitant, afraid. Yeah, I feel him, grown, a bit in shadow, taking my hand and helping me up. We are on the bank again for the second time of what I call the inland sea. I feel this is a large calm body of water underground on Mars. The light is very muted, mauve, muted russets, dull orange, muted rose. There is no direct light, there is no breeze, all is still. But it feels very peaceful and calm, soothing, as if time has stopped. No one seems to be around, and yet I feel there are others, not far off. He can show me everything. Blue can show me everything. I have to get used to this. There will be a time when I'm ready to know everything, all he's been through, or maybe what I mean is all that we have been through. And I say to him, I will always love you, Blue, and I will never leave you. As I write this, I feel sadness. Does this mean his departure is imminent? And you can tell I'm always worried he's going to be taken from me again, because he was. It's always feeling that way. It's just what I fear of losing him, because that's what happened in the past. In our memory, I see battles and also hiding. There's danger. The energy is intense and palpable. Yeah. And further on, January 13th, he was taken and owned by the Draco. I know this, and I start to cry. I know I lost him to the Draco. And he was owned by them just as I was. How fitting, in a very twisted way. A great grief consumes me. I feel I failed him, even though I can't say all that has happened yet. And also this, I know that we are being reborn. There's something poignant, even though he was owned by the Draco, and there's some things we'll talk about here related to that are next level. And I also remember his piloting memories that he had with the Draco and his Draco dominated aspect, which breaks my heart. Like that he was owned by the Draco and I can see his co-opted aspect. He's shown me this, come to me with that visage, that avatar, so to say, owned by the Draco. In which case he tells me he feels like he's done something, and this is his adult self, his adult warrior aspect that's been weaponized then by the Draco. They got to him. He feels he's done something that cannot be repaired, that he's trapped in and can't get out of. And this is programming, which plays to his human side, which comes from me. The spell he's under makes him feel like he's responsible for quote unquote doing bad things. Now, this is classical trauma-based mind control programming in which the roles of the victim and the perpetrator are flipped. You've heard me talk about this on the channel. Again, classical programming, allow the victim or make the victim, lead the victim, handle the victim into a situation in which they will believe they are responsible for the atrocities being committed, and over time, become their own jailer. Like long after we're done being handled and abused in the programs, we continue to enslave ourselves to these ideas that we are the ones who created the wrongdoing. So such is the case with Blue. And he feels like he can't get out of it. So my awareness as these days tick by, my awareness of the Draco having owned him and controlled him, enslaved him, used him, it deepens at the same time that I start to receive all this potent dragon energy, the poison and the antidote arriving at once in a way. Yeah. Dragon energy will shift all of this. Whew. Yeah. So let's have a little journey deeper into January, or back into January. Go to page 12. Okay. Oh my God. Yeah. Thank you for a moment. Yeah. My son thinks his destiny is with the Draco. Maybe this is like giving them their noble dragon roots back, as in to help them find the light and shift their path out of darkness. Is that why? Did he volunteer for this? Like I volunteered in some way. Again, that's at the soul level, not the human incarnation level. My son could do this, in fact, because he's becoming a dragon. Powerful, important in some way, uniting important dragon energies, perhaps to the Draco and other reptilian worlds. Like linking the dragon, Draco, and Mars reptilians to some collective source. There's something important. Linking the dragon, Draco, and Mars reptilians to some collective source, like the reptilian races have, like a seed source that's important. My son can retrieve the dragon inheritance for the Draco. This is how I wrote it in my phone right after flow. So some of this is retrieved through the flow tank. I also see myself as a white dragon with him. This is my Lyran aspect, also known as Tia. I see him as a white dragon in my womb. I'm giving birth, in essence, to a dragon, my dragon child. Right now, though, it's most important to just love him. The story will come. Yeah. And then there's some memory that came back to do with him being wounded in battle and like going directly into his memory field. And I've written this February 12th. right before I went to bed. Um, I'm saying to Blue, I'm your mother and I'm here. I'm repeating this over and over. You must help him. Don't die on me. I keep telling him not to die on me. My son has led to me. He's hurt. Blue is hurt from battle, bloody, damaged, and in pain. I hear and feel myself directing others on the Light Alliance, aka Galactic Confederation ship, to get him in the pod. It is urgent. Somehow it feels like if he knows I'm his mother, the spell will be broken. The trance will end through this terrible programming. Yeah. So there's some bleed through from his own battle experiences. And again, further on in February. And I'm saying this over and over to him. This happens so many days in Sid. It's like I'm trying to wake him up, break the spell. Code word. Blue, it's me. I'm your mother. I love you. I'm here. I'm repeating this over and over like it breaks the trance. The code word is mother. Like he has to remember his origin point with me as well as because once a Draco own you, they kind of program you to think that this is the only reality you have ever known. And if you begin to remember love, something shifts. And the programming is a spell that will be broken. Yeah. I have a feeling that will make sense to some of you and be useful to some of you. So let's get into this for this important piece about the dragon. The dragons. We've already talked about these indigenous reptilian. The reptilians on Mars have this spiritual connection with the planet, which is wed with living dragon energy connected to source. Yeah, it's how they made light and water and can grow things underground, where ostensibly there's no light. Well, you'll remember if you've watched this whole series some years ago, I talked about shifting my DNA that came through my mother's German lineage, had dark reptilian gunk in it through SRA, shifting the DNA. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know this was happening. I mean, maybe my soul knew this was going to happen and was in charge. My higher self was in charge. Shifted to benevolent white dragon from Lyra. This family from Lyra kind of uh, moving in and shifting my DNA. Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing, but that's possible. Well, all things are apparently possible through the quantum field and quantum healing. So, and I call that aspect of me, that white dragon aspect of me, which I experienced full on in Sid myself as a white dragon, really loving and protective. And that essence of me is called Tia, because I need a reference point, a human identifier, a human label, or look for labels and names. So, through me, Blue can receive that kind of dragon empowerment as a starting point, that important reptilian seed source. It comes through me and it helps free and heal him. Um, and over the years, I've had massive attunements and protection energy and predominantly love from this Lyran dragon family, as I call them, from Lyra. They all appear as white, really luminous white dragons, and each of them has a signature kind of pastel glow or aura around it, that's significant, and they just transmit so much loving frequency. It's powerful. So as I've attuned more with that over time, it now transmits easily to Blue, and it has to run through the portal or conduit of love, breaking the spell of his programming. Um, and in the beginning, when he's still a baby and I'm getting to know him like as a toddler, he's very young in the beginning of our meeting. So in real time, we can talk about the end of 2024. He's, as a little boy, super excited to be meeting the dragons and having them show up. So there's where does this go back to? Like page 3 or something. Where are we at? December 1st. I suddenly feel Tia's family around me and sit. So this is the loving white dragon family. Yeah, I feel their strong, gentle love and acceptance. It's so big and equanimous. It's so present. My reptilian son is so excited. He reaches up and out toward them, but it's as if there's a pane of glass separating them. He can't connect. He cannot connect yet, but oh, how he wants to. There's such a huge sense of poignant longing in this. It's so powerful. I sense this is his inheritance at a cosmic and primordial level, these upper dimensional reptilian dragon energies. Yeah. So it's sort of foreshadowing precognizantly what's going to unfold. That was just a couple of weeks after I'd met him that happened. Yeah, I think beautiful about that. And he wants to go home. This is his little like more young like child self. He wants to go home. He wants to return to the stars. I feel this sometimes too. Well, where is that? Is it Mars? Is it the Light Alliance ship? Is it Lyra? You know, that confusion as a refugee of like, where am I? Where do I belong? Confusion of many on the ship in a way, you know, in that particular Syrian ship that I'm kind of hanging out on. Yeah, yeah, just reflecting on that as we allow ourselves to be loved, we can hold that higher frequency for others, and such is the case with my son. Again and again, I'm saying it breaks the spell of the Draco. And I say to him, I don't care what you've done, Blue. You belong to me and I belong to you. I'm your mother and I love you. Period. So that's taking us on a long journey from when I first met him. He's coming into my meditation psychically, and I'm like, get out. Now there's like this indelible bond. It didn't take too long to rekindle that flame, which I find really beautiful and welcome. There's also been this immensely potent. It was incredibly shocking at first. This green dragon, but I call it an orange fire dragon because it's like emanating this orange field like fire, and it has up leveled my solar plexus in ways that I have not heretofore experienced in this embodiment. Next level, and it transmits to Blue to potentize him on his own to break free of whatever he needs to break free of. Um, and we can liken and link this back to the importance of my solar plexus in connecting to the Light Alliance ship in the pods. The more I allow myself to be in my own power as a woman and a human here in this embodiment as Rebecca, the more I'm able to integrate the energies from the ship, and the more I'm living in both worlds in a way that can be healthy and supportive and to transmit higher galactic light, divine energies, ascension, codes to the collective through me, my own life, and so on, just as many of you can also. So it's important to both of our paths that we're kind of hanging out with the dragons and allowing all this to transpire. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Feels really good to be talking about this finally. It's like you can see there's so many different, there's nuances and subtlety that are kind of hard to like hammer out into linear, like ABC 1, 2, 3, this happened, this happened, this happened. And the more we move into like multidimensional reality, the more challenging it is to convey this to a human audience in a way that makes sense. In the English language. So I find it, at least as I was like getting all of this together. And Blue has really shown up as a strong protector in his like adult capacity, freed from the Draco or slowly freeing from them, let's say, through the quantum field. Faithful, loyal, and loving. I mean, absolutely, that is all true. So I think there's a little soundbite from my notes to read on that. And he's been showing up as I was getting ready to record this today. In the past few days, his presence has been really strong. I feel him just on my left, behind me just a bit, in the protector position, very much just like staying there, hanging out with me. Yeah, he's here. And so this was February 7th. Blue, my son on my left, as a healer and protector, even as a guide. He wants to give back to me. Understands I essentially gave him my life to birth him. Checks and balances are important to his race, a kind of cosmic justice. And while that rings a bell, since that is so much what we on the Light Alliance ship are concerned with, checks and balances. He says to me, and again, this is back in early February 7th, I was born of earth, and to the earth I return. Now, what does that mean? Me. I was born of you, and to you I return. That's poetic. Very poetically rendered, I must say. And lastly, throughout all of this, I've been given visions and meditation and through the tank and so on, and just ordinary waking life of a neutral type of reptilian being curled up in my womb, connected to Blue. It's like it's indicative of that original seed stock that I talked about, the source of what seems to be a singular source for a variety of different reptilian races, original reptilian template connected to source. And it's beautiful. It's like it's surrounded by white light through my womb. And it may be something that's alive in all of us. And that can freak people out. It's like, oh, reptilian energy, ick. But we're all carrying a lot of different genetic information. So use it to your advantage. It doesn't have to be dormant, and it doesn't have to be in the manner of anything regressive whatsoever. We were here talking about dragon energies. What are they? They're reptilian. So, yeah, just pause with me. Also, a couple dots I connected with all of this was like, I'd woken over the years since the recall of this whole, the original memories of this reptilian race picking me up after I crashed and bringing me home. I'd remembered that, and I wondered, why do I wake up in the night sometimes in tears, wondering if they survived, wondering how they are. I was like really emotional, like not really understanding why I had this like deep connection to that level. Wow, doesn't that make sense? Because I had a child there, because I died there, and there was a lot of emotional complexity there. So totally makes sense to me now. And also kind of a of note, why was I obsessed with watching The Mandalorian? He's a bounty hunter. He's a pilot. He's a killer in some ways, as was I as a super soldier. And he's got that kid Grogu. Totally. You read me? So riveting. And in the time leading up to the memories with Blue, like the whole year and more prior to that, I've been seeing galactic children everywhere, etherically and psychically, and they still come through. But part of that is related to the fact that I had a hybrid son, a galactic child myself. So it is that we kind of, you know, we have pieces and parts that come through over time. And when we're patiently sitting with them in memory recall, as some of you are doing, things begin to dial in and make a lot more sense. So keep going. Yeah, and that's really one of the lessons, to stay open-minded, even when we don't know what's quite happening. Don't throw the baby out with the proverbial bathwater. Stay with it, and remember that you can, in some sense, through the quantum field, rewrite the past and even create a new future. When it's aligned with the heart, all things are possible. Yeah. So big lessons on love and staying open, and being patient, patiently abiding. And I think too, maybe a side note about not rushing the process. Yeah, it's important. Um, So in future videos, there's a couple more coming. There's one thing that's been happening too, is I've been having a lot more contact with, I call him Nicodemus. This is the name I was given he's kind of a commander or captain of that Syrian Light Alliance ship that I'm on. And he seems to preside over something about me in the pods. He comes through as a very, almost like a father figure. He's dark skinned. And which is funny, when I said, what do you call me? And he said Nicodemus. Um, we could go back into I had to look at this up. I have no idea who Nicodemus was. He's a biblical feature biblical guy in the Bible who receives teachings on rebirth from Jesus, but he's also recorded as an American slave who bought his own freedom. There is a town in Kansas called Nicodemus, where freed slaves were invited to emigrate. So this has to do with refugees, liberation, and freedom in so many ways. So anyway, the point being, Nicodemus has had a lot of transmissions coming through these past few days, so I'm sure I'll be bringing forth more on that. And another episode too in the series is going to be about what happens, or what happened, I should say, past tense, when I went back to visit my natal family home and my mother for the first time in 12 years. Some shocking revelations there. Indeed. So, and this is, I want to say, there's more to the story with my son. I think we've done enough here. There's more. It might be a part two to this. There's more that will come out. But thanks for listening to this point and kind of holding space for this all to come through. Yeah. And as I said at the beginning, join me on Rumble. You can follow me below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel here in YouTube if you haven't. Um, You can join me on Telegram as well. That's my main social media presence outside of YouTube. And now Rumble is Telegram. That link is below. You can catch me at the Super Soldier Activation Conference live in Orlando in October, also linked below. And if you want to book one-on-one sessions with me, you can do that. You can get on my mailing list if you want to receive information about courses and webinars coming up, and also one-on-one sessions if you want to do some powerful transformational work, starseed coaching, readings, quantum healing, galactic attunements, inner child integration, past life, parallel life readings, and more. And you can also book a dragon attunement with me. That's one of my specialties. If you've seen me popping up all over on spiritual masterclass series and giving talks about the dragons, you know it's whether or not I mention my son in those things, you know now that it's really linked to Blue and our story. Oh, so I think devoting the goodness inside of our series, our episode today is yeah, devotion to reunion, loving reunion in unlikely places, and also to the liberation of our planet. I'm Rebecca Rose, Sirius Blue, and thank you so much for being here. Wherever love is calling you, go there and don't waste any time. Say yes. Goranisha mukaramani kesha unkaramani kichimakaroi kawan chimikaramakakaramunch, chimakoro, chijakoro, yata de lanzon shviklini, golanshi, ganamutango. Just to mention this briefly, I have a mother and father from a previous lifetime, indigenous mother and father, and I just call them simply mother and father. They've been with me every day for about 2.5 years. They were my parents from a previous lifetime with the Crow people, and they've helped me heal so much. They've done soul retrieval work for me. They helped me journey to get parts back. And that's actually ongoing. Like even today, I was working with them this morning. And their love is so beautifully unconditional.